Welcome to this evening's event. My name is Aska Hisa, and I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement here at ICALA. And this evening we have a special tour with someone extraordinary. That's how we do it around here. We are doing a point of view tour, which is something that we enjoy doing with all of our exhibitions to offer perspectives that are not our own on the work and to shed more light. And this evening's POV tour is on the exhibition Trương Công Tùng, which is in our project room and curated by Amanda Sroka, who's modestly sitting by the pole over there, but I'm going to bring Amanda in. And my job is to just welcome you to this this program. And I did not know Tong's work before before it came here, and so I am in the process of learning about this artist's practice and work. And every time I go in the space, I'm transported. So that's wonderful. And there's a list of words that are there to describe it, but are incredibly accurate because that's how I feel. That's how you'll feel. There's a lot that transpires when you look at the objects and the space and hear the sounds and see visuals around the objects. It's mystical. It addresses the indigenous. It is spiritual. There are references to nature and landscape, history, fraught histories, colonialism, materiality. It's asking you for reflection and relationship to these objects, relationship to history. And it's looking at traditions and the past and the future with care and healing. So these are just my general impressions. And as I'm living with this work as a art worker in this place, it is incredibly rewarding to experience Tong's work. And so Amanda will speak a little more about why the exhibition happened and how she developed a relationship with the artist to bring a selection of works here. But then what I do here at the museum is to develop some programs with the artists, if they are around to discuss programs, and with Tong and Amanda and the curatorial team, with Tanya, Colette B. here, and Caroline Liu, who are also involved. We were in these discussions, and one of the things that came up, we can do all kinds of things, right? We try to accommodate all kinds of ideas. And one of those ideas was came from Tong to have music or some kind of interactivity happening with the work, and that's incredible because you don't know if you can do that. And so we were given permission by the artist to invite someone to interact. Now, then when we went into this sort of, scratching our heads and going, who could that be? And at the opening, we met some extraordinary people, as always, at all our open houses and our events. We meet great people all the time. And we met the person who you will meet tonight, and that's Jason Wen, who is an incredible musician. He will be giving the POV tour, offering his perspectives, and also introducing you, if you don't know, or sort of reintroducing you, if you do know, the work that he does around music, ethnomusicology, and history of Vietnam, and cultural histories of Vietnam. So I'm going to, we do these sheets on for these events so that I don't have to read a bio and not look at you, but I will encourage you. We also like them to be souvenirs, so get yours autographed. But Jason is an impressive dual doctorate in ethnomusicology and communication and culture from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, where they have one of the most extraordinary music programs in the country, if not the world. And he recently completed a dissertation that analyzes the identity, performances, and cultural practices of the Vietnamese diaspora. So that is just me giving you this synopsis of its bio, but please read more. Incredible. There's a TED Talk out there. You can check out all kinds of things on Jason, but I want to bring in Amanda to talk about it, the show from the curatorial perspective and the curatorial impulse to do this exhibition. So come on in, Amanda.
I feel like you did such a wonderful introduction to the show. And all of those words are words that like come out to me too when I experience the work. As Oscar said, I'm Amanda. I'm the senior curator here. And I started at ICALA in September of last year and had the real privilege and honor to get to organize our summer season of exhibitions. And my background, I moved here from Philadelphia, where I was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And a lot of my research at the museum was really focused on South and Southeast Asia. And so I felt really excited and energized by this chance to bring an artist, Tung, to LA, who hadn't had an exhibition here before and hasn't had a museum solo exhibition. And ICALA has such a wonderful history as a museum of firsts. And so I saw the opportunity with these summer exhibitions to kind of, share a little bit about myself as a curator, the artists who excite me, and drive my own curiosity, and who I think are really pressing at the edges of what art is and what art can be. And so with these three exhibitions, Tung's being one of them, as well as Carmen Argote and Alberta Whittle, they're all joined by this kind of thread line of a connection to movement or migration in some way, shape, or form. And as Oscar said, with Tung's installation in particular, it's very much looking at his own relationship to his homeland in the Central Highlands of Vietnam, and that kind of embroiled relationship that place has to industrialization, to colonial histories, and also to his family and to kind of personal story. And so as Oscar mentioned, we worked together really closely with Tung on the installation to conceive of a kind of constellation of works that he's been producing across sculpture and video and sound, and something really poetic and beautiful that Tung shared while he was here in LA for the installation was about how the ways that sound it really offers the narrative for the work where language falls short. And I feel that, Jason, with what you're offering us tonight, it's another point of entry into those sounds. And so just knowing your own background and the time that you got to spend with Tung here is so special. And I know that he's going to be really thrilled to see the work active and activated in this way. So I think that's good, and as by way of an introduction, but I'm happy to answer any more questions too after Jason leads this tour.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you all the great folks at ICALA for inviting me and for going through the kind of meticulous process of getting everything filmed, because my wife and kids aren't here and they really want to see it too. So thank you for doing that. I'm just going to say it's for me. But thank you everyone for being here. So I met Tung that night at the opening. And he's a reserved, shy, person. But I noticed that from the moment that he spoke with this very warm Southern accent. Now, my family, this is something that helps understand what I felt when I went in there, is that my family has a Northern Vietnamese background, even though they ended up in the South because of all the conflicts. So I still speak with a northern accent, the same northern accent my mom has, and you can tell the difference between the two accents when people drink, because when a northerner drinks, the way they'll raise their cup is "Mot hai ba zo," right? Like it's almost German, right? And then like a southern like "Mot hai ba yo," right? And it's just warm. It's to me it's a lot like, I feel like in a lot of places in the world, the North and the South have this kind of relationship to each other, where the North are a little bit more rigid. You know, they have things they believe. You know, they believe them really strongly, and the South, they have things they believe them really strongly, but they're a little more chill about it, right? I spent a semester in Venice, and I felt it was the same. Like the difference between Venice and Rome was like, you know, day and night. But I had that experience with Dong, which reminded me, in part, about the way the place you are forms who you are, and it does it very quickly, right? So in my family, they were Northerners up until 1954 on both sides of my family. Both my mom and dad happened to come from the North. But I grew up in North Carolina with my parents and grandparents, listening to a ton of Southern Vietnamese opera. And in fact, that night, one of the ways all of us were joking, the Vietnamese people in the room that night were very rowdy. And we were joking about Southern Vietnamese opera, and we're trying to explain it to everyone. And so, like, they're all trying to pretend to do it. I'm an ethnomusicologist. I know Southern Vietnamese opera. So, despite my normally northern accent, right, I can go, Trời ơi, bởi xa cơ chữ chân thọ tướng nên gió đụng sứ định chia tay vinh viên bạch thu hà. And that's in me. That's in me because when my parents my dad's side, my mom actually hates Southern opera, but it's in me from my dad's side because my grandparents were always watching Southern Vietnamese opera. They had spent most of their lives up until they moved south as Northerners, listening to the things Northerners listen, eating the things Northerners eat. And they became part of the South. They loved the South, right? And then now they're in America and they love America, right? But it made me think about where Dong comes from. When you go in there, maybe you'll get a sense of it. He's from Dak Lak, which is a part of Vietnam up in the mountains in the south, where a lot of the indigenous people still live. And I say indigenous people in this case as a reminder that people like me, my family, are actually the colonizers of Vietnam in a way, right? I was with some Vietnamese friends this past week, and we were in Vancouver, but it was very sunny this week in Vancouver, and I was joking, like, I don't know what the hell kind of tropical person I am because I am burning up, right? I don't have the melanin to be tropical, which was a reminder, though, that I'm not supposed to have the melanin to be tropical because my people, ethnically, came from up north, came down, and took over the area we call Vietnam, right? And there's a lot of violence involved in that. There's a lot of love involved in that. There's commingling. There's all these different things happening. Dong is from Dak Lak, an area where a lot of indigenous people still live in Vietnam. A group of people like the Ede in particular, people who are still trying to figure out how, or have always tried to figure out their place in contemporary Vietnam, right? That's sitting on the margins of this country, or these countries at one point. So let me give you kind of an example, again from music. In the South, in right around 1972, 73, there was a singer, he's still alive, of Cham ethnic origin. The Cham is it refers to the Champa Kingdom, which is kind of ruled over the entirety of central Vietnam, that region, a few hundred years back, or even 1,000 years back. So this singer's name is Jae Linh. And Jae Ling's a very famous singer amongst even what we call the ethnic majority, Kinh people. And he sings, at the time he sang soldiers' songs, songs about their lovers back home, songs about being sad, being happy, mostly being sad. But his songs moved everybody. People loved Jiling's songs, right? He sang Vietnamese bolero, a lot of that. And about 72, 73, the war was going a little bit badly for the South. Jiling got banned from singing in large venues in South Vietnam. No one ever said why. It's hard to know, and it's all guesses right now. He's only talked about it in kind of whispers himself. But one scholar, I think wrote an article I read from the 90s. I think it said that it was because the president of Vietnam, who was Catholic at the time, was so afraid of the ghost of the Champa kingdom rising up in the body and voice of Jiling, that he was so suspicious about it and so afraid of it, that's why he was banned. So there's a haunting quality to the indigeneity and the kind of indigenous qualities that I found in this space that I think you'll see as well. I mean, some of it's very obvious. There'll be things moving around, and but I talked to Dung that night as well, and this relationship with the spirit world is in his family. So you'll see that it's kind of multi-generational, and he brought it into this work, I think, very deliberately, in part because of the place he's been, and also in part because of his own family background. So those are some kind of opening impressions. Now, how am I going to interact with the space, and what are the kind of themes that I thought about as I was making plans? Well, the main instrument I play is this thing. I started out playing violin like every good Asian American kid. I played violin up through college. But while in college, I decided I wanted to play a Vietnamese instrument. The Vietnamese instrument that I picked was one that looked the most Vietnamese. Most other Vietnamese instruments that people popularly play have origins in Chinese music or in Mongolian music. So you can always trace it somewhere else, right? Or it's a guitar, right? But this instrument in particular can be traced to the region of northern Vietnam and then kind of propagated through the rest of Vietnam through the 20th century, maybe the 19th century. Interesting thing about the danbo, though, is that it's a beggar's instrument. As a beggar's instrument, it was very quiet and not for an ensemble. You're not playing a beggar's instrument with a bunch of people. Usually you're begging by yourself, right? If you're begging with friends, you're doing pretty good. So this is a one-person instrument traditionally, and it was also very quiet. Now the name danbo is a kind of colloquial name for it, but it means dan is the word Vietnamese people use for any instrument, dan, and then bo is actually the word for gourd. Now one scholar says in this case the word bo might mean something else, and they might be right, but it doesn't matter, because as an ethnomusicologist and a folklorist, sometimes what people believe is all that matters. And the majority of people believe that the bo in danbo means gourd. The reason is because this one doesn't have one. This is my backup one for out here. But the danbo usually has a gourd attached at the end of the string, right there. And that gourd serves as one of the kind of resonators of the instrument. Okay, so it's very important. I think that there's a poem that says, a universe of sound in the body of a gourd, right? Is this to describe the sound of the danbo? So, funny enough, Dung's exhibit is like all gourds. It's like 70–80% gourds. Right? It's like gourds and tubes, right? Right? I mean, it's a. So I came in there. I was like, oh man, it's like bow everywhere. But but that's also part of being Vietnamese. I mean, like, bo, it's what you store water in. It's what you eat. Oh man, like, bo soup is like one of my favorite soups. You know, like, a gourd means everything, right? And you'll see in there's gourds being used as musical instruments. There's gourds being used as containers. You know, gourds as decoration. Gourds are doing everything in that room. In here, I've spent the past 20 years of my life playing an instrument that's supposed to have a gourd. Okay, so here's the funny part then. Mine doesn't have a gourd. I'm still going to play it here. Okay, so why is it still going to play? Well, sometime in the early 20th century, people got tired of playing danbo by themselves. Electric guitars were becoming a thing. Jimi Hendrix, you know, was on the horizon. And Vietnamese people decided to electrify the danbo, put a pickup in it. The traditional danbo looks a little bit different, but honestly, no one knows what it looks like. I mean, like, I know what it looks like, but you don't need to know what it looks like, and most people don't. Because no one's played it that way for 100 years, except for some nerdy scholars who really want to know how it is played, right? And I say nerdy in the most loving way, right? So the danbo has been electrified. I don't know the exact date, but it's got to be the past 50, 60 years, right? I mean, probably the moment electric guitar broke in Vietnam, someone was like, I know what to do with this pickup, right? And shoved it in a danbo. So to me, one of the kind of inversions that I found very unique about Tung's work versus my work is you'll see this kind of overtaking that nature is doing over our space, right? Nature in his exhibition, to me, feels like it's overtaking this museum. It's overtaking the room. That the indigenous, that the natural, that the things that people have done for centuries, that stuff, and the things that animals and creatures and plant life and everything has done for millennia is coming up, rising up. You can't push it back, right? You'll see bugs on TV screens. You'll see all kinds of things like that. But then at the same time, so that's for me though, because the danbo has been electrified for so long, I think about how everything has always been technology. Folklore is its own technology, a social technology. It brings people together, helps people understand certain things. And we might say that there is a certain technology to the way nature works, right? Systems that help nature work in its own way. Systems that help nature push back against the excesses of humanity, right? So for me, I like to think about the inverse, about how everything's technological in its own way, in the sense that we're putting systems to use, that we're trying to figure things out, that we're trying to make, right? That the creatures of the world are making things out of their world, okay? Today, these days we're talking about global warming. It's important to talk about global climate change. Yesterday was the hottest day apparently for like thousands of years on the face of the planet. But you know, when I think about global warming, my undergrad degree is in biology, so I'm going to get biological here for a second. We weren't the first creatures to completely screw up the planet's atmosphere. Anyone know something else that happened way before us, where the atmosphere just got totally borked? The moment some creatures decided to spit out oxygen into the atmosphere, they were spitting poison into the atmosphere. Oxygen was poison in the atmosphere, and it completely changed everything on the planet, right? Like we moved from a mostly kind of anaerobic environment, no oxygen environment, to one in which the ones who rule in are the ones who breathe in oxygen, right? So we're different, but we're not that different. And Tung's exhibit reminds me of that we're not so far from the things that he's showing, that I've used, kind of the idea of overtaking. Things that are overtaking us, they're overtaking us because they're not that far from us, right? So those are my thoughts there on the exhibit. I don't want to say too much more. I want you to experience it. But I will take a moment. I'm going to move the mic over here and show you how this thing works before I go in there. The danbo, as I play it in there, so in the past year and a half, 2 years, I've been saying, well, if the danbo is electric now, if I'm a man of technology, then why don't I just play it like an electric guitar? So I do play it. I do find it important to play genres or to study traditional genres. They have things in them. They have a vocabulary in them that is important to understand, just like Southern Vietnamese opera, cải lương. So whenever people ask to learn danbo with me, I say you got to pick a genre. You got to pick a traditional genre, and once you learn that, you can do whatever you want, but you got to pick one at least. Yeah, you got to pick one and dig deep and see where these roots go. And then you can decide to go wherever you want afterwards. But that said, I spent 20 years doing this. I can play cải lương with the best of them. So in the past couple of years, I said, well, this instrument's already electrified. Let's start playing it like it's electrified. You notice every person who plays a danbo, if you watch kind of you ever watch kind of a show in Vietnam, like one of the kind of folklore shows, one of the folk music shows, everyone wants to make the instrument look older than it is. There's a pickup in there. They'll wrap it in bamboo. They'll put extra carvings on it. Mine has one because you can't buy it any other way. But let you guys in on a secret. It's that one thing I want to do in the next year, 2 years, is I want to really hot rod out a danbo. Like, carve it and paint it the way people do electric guitars. You know, like that really shiny paint, and like just curves. It'll be just all curves. Oh, it would be awesome, man. Like, I don't care. He's a traditionalist, and I'll still have these around, but I want to have a crazy one. But in any case, all that's to say that I don't like to draw the lines, and I think it's useful to see lines not being drawn. So you're going to be seeing the danbo played in some different ways than it's normally played. But I do want to show you the kind of basics of the instrument right now, and then maybe it will take like 5 minutes for the camera people to readjust, right? Will that be good? Yeah. And then I'll play some music for you in there. Before I go over here, what I have planned, I have let's not call them pieces, 2 textures, all right? That I have kind of created in there. So come in, kind of find a nice comfortable space. Feel free to move around a little bit, though not too much because it's all gourds and pipes in there. So you'll probably trip. But find a nice comfortable space and then kind of let it all wash over you. We've let a lot of the ambient sound from the installation stay. When I talked to all the folks here, that's something that we thought maybe would be cool to just keep going. And also, a lot of it's mechanical, so you can't even get rid of it anyway. So, in any case, let it all wash over you. What I'm doing, what Tung has put in the space, what is embodying his ideas in the space. And so there'll be one texture. I'll pause briefly, and then another one. Thank you. Okay, everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, so the danbo is a one-string instrument, which means it does this, like a guitar, right? And this thing over here is made of buffalo horn. And if you know anything about strings, about physics, then if you release the tension, it gets lower. And if you increase the tension, it goes higher. Right? Okay, so there's a lot of instruments in the world that use that kind of idea, that you can tighten and loosen the tension of the string to get different pitches. The problem with that is that you only get a little bit of range before you either loosen it too much and it starts bending in on itself. Sorry, so it's getting really hard to play anything down there. Or you go too hard and it's gonna pop. If I go any further, I'm probably gonna break the string. All right. So the novel thing about the Dunbow, and talking about technology, I wonder who was the person who sat down and said, this is a thing I could do. This is, in physics, you call the harmonics. Guitar players and other string players would know about it. The waveform of a string, if you just hit it, it wobbles up and down. Where it's tied down are the nodes, they stay in place, wobbles like that. If you force a node by putting your hand on it for just a second, you make a wave that's half the length. Because it's going to bounce here and bounce here. If you can do it in thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths. Okay. Because of the way our human ear hears, because of the way we understand pitches, the half, the fourth, and the eighth are octaves of each other. The same way the third, and the sixth are, for the mathematicians out there, are octaves of each other as well. Okay, so actually the Dunbow, I would say it is hard to play, but easy to understand. Okay, and it's easy to understand because that's it. There's nothing left. I'm done. Now you guys go home. All right. But the problem, and this, so first off, getting this plucking down where it's clean, that took me like 2-3 months, and even then it wasn't great. But still, that's mechanical, right? You can sort it out. You just got to practice forever. When people ask me, like, about Vietnamese music, they're always asking about instruments. And like, I don't care about instruments. I don't need to have that bow to understand Vietnamese music, but I need my head to understand Vietnamese music. I need my heart to understand Vietnamese music, right? And what makes Vietnamese music is the way that we talk and the way that we sing. And if you can make your playing sound like talking and singing, then you're playing Vietnamese music, right? That's Lee Kun Sao, a song about it's one of folk songs about birds. There's a bunch of lees about different animals and different foods, all kinds of stuff. So that should give you some sense of kind of the vocal quality of the instrument, right? It's not a vocal quality of the instrument per se even. It's a vocal quality of how you want to play it, right? Because it's all how you play it. It's not in the instrument, it's in you, right? And I happen to be born in North Carolina and raised by Vietnamese parents, so I have a lot of different musical interests. But what's unique about kind of, and I'm talking about here, about ethnic majority Kinh Vietnamese music, is that when you're playing Western, like say classical music, the big difference in between different songs is the key you're in, right? And the key you're in doesn't really matter if you're just talking about like whether I'm going to sing high or sing low. It matters if you're like switching between major and minor, for example, right? The kind of modes that you're in. That has to do with the pitch. So in Western music, we've learned that certain pitches produce a sad sound and some pitches produce a happier sound, right? So a minor key, a major key sounds happier, right? So in Vietnamese music, it's similar. The Vietnamese scales are more pentatonic. They're kind of vacillate between being pentatonic and heptatonic. So 5 notes per octave versus 7. But the real special difference is that it's not just the pitches, it's also where you put your vibrato, which is very different. And was one of the things I had to learn early on when I was studying Vietnamese music, is the happy key in Vietnamese music is not just about these pitches. Which you have to have right, but you also have to have 2 notes that you vibrato. And just those 2. All the others get different kinds of vibratos, but the kind of like real, what you think of as a vibrato, like a violinist would do. Only this note. Okay. Whereas a sad song, I mean, yeah, I played one before, but I'll just play a little bit now, is these 2. So you might do little things like that. But the vibratos only get that. So those are 2 keys. There's a lot more, but that's the kind of basic idea. The first one in Vietnamese is called Hơi Bắc, and the second one we call Hơi Nam. So the southern, we call it the northern key, which is happier, and the southern key, which is sadder. So anyway, that is a kind of a little bit of introduction into what I'm going to be playing in there. I'm also going to be interacting with the exhibit more directly a little bit, but I also don't want to trip, so I'm going to be a little careful. Thank you for coming, and I'll see you in the exhibit.
Bye.